Acts 13 recounts one of the wilder episodes in Paul's early ministry. He and Barnabas are on Cyprus when they run into a magician named Bar-Jesus, also called Elymas. The guy is hanging around the Roman proconsul Sergius Paulus, trying to turn him away from the gospel. Bad move. Luke writes, Paul looked intently at him and said, "You son of the devil, you enemy of all righteousness, full of deceit and villainy, will you not stop making crooked the straight paths of the Lord? And now, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon you, and you will be blind and unable to see the sun for a time." Immediately, Elymas is struck blind and starts groping around for someone to guide him. Sergius Paulus sees this and is so floored by it, he becomes a Christian. Now, let's ask the question, is this just dramatic storytelling, or are there reasons to think that this actually happened? For starters, Luke tells us that Sergius Paulus was a proconsul, which is a very specific Roman title. At the time of Paul's journey, Cyprus was classified as a senatorial province, which meant it was governed by a proconsul appointed by the Roman Senate. That's opposed to an imperial province, which was ruled by a legate appointed by the emperor, like Judea was. Cyprus became senatorial in 22 BC and stayed that way for a while. Here's why that matters. If Luke was just making stuff up decades later, or writing from some faraway place long after the events, it would have been really easy to get this wrong. Most provinces weren't under proconsuls, and by the time of the Flavian emperors, which is 69 AD onward, Cyprus may have already switched back to imperial control. And if Acts was written after 70 AD, as many skeptical scholars claim, Luke would have been even more likely to use the wrong title unless he had access to eyewitness level detail. But he doesn't. He absolutely nails it. But is Sergius Paulus a real guy? As it turns out, there's an inscription found in Soli on the northern coast of Cyprus that reads, "In the proconsulship of Paulus." It's dated somewhere in the 1st or possibly 2nd century. If it refers to our Sergius Paulus, that's pretty direct confirmation of the guy's existence and office. Even if it's a different Paulus, it still supports the idea that someone from the Paulus family held this role consistent with Acts' account. Wow. And here's where things get extra interesting. Right after that encounter, Paul and Barnabas sailed to Pisidian Antioch. That wasn't the nearest or most obvious next stop. So why go there? Well, we actually have another inscription, this time from Pisidian Antioch, referring to a man named Lucius Sergius Paulus the Younger. The Latin spelling of Paulus matches what we would expect, and Lucius was a super common Roman name. This guy held multiple public offices and was clearly a person of status. It's highly plausible that he was related to the proconsul from Cyprus. So, is this just a coincidence that Paul went straight to the hometown of someone likely related to Sergius Paulus? Or did the newly converted proconsul send Paul to share the gospel with his family? That would definitely explain the travel route and reinforce the idea that this story came from Paul himself. Now, getting back to the miracle, a guy getting struck blind in front of a Roman official isn't something you would just misremember. Either it happened or Paul lied about it. And since Luke traveled with Paul, he likely got this story straight from him. The historical details, political accuracy, and archaeological support all point this to being a real story, not some legend that's just made up later. Paul told the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians 12:12, "The signs of a true apostle were performed among you, with signs and wonders and mighty work." That is a risky claim to make if it didn't happen, especially considering how some of the Corinthians seem to be skeptical of Paul. So when Acts says Paul blinded a guy, it tracks. This is exactly the kind of stuff Paul pointed to as evidence that he wasn't faking it. Now, if only I had the power to blind a few of the clowns spreading nonsense about Christianity on YouTube, that would make apologetics way more efficient.